up, everybody? I'm super excited to be here today. Thank you for clicking on this video. If you want to subscribe, comment, you're really free to do so. I would be really happy because it helped the channel. But also, let's talk about some topics. I'm being more and more passionate about what I'm doing right now because I feel that it's leading somewhere. We've talked about the conception of God and the way of the master, how the master should act, but like, how can we get there? And we're gonna get there, but it's gonna take a long process because we have to rewire our brain to see worlds differently, so our thoughts, our actions, and our words reflects our new way of seeing life. And it's not a small job; it is a something big to accomplish, but we're getting there. And I'm really excited about next episode that I'm gonna do because we're gonna get in the gist of the topic, in the core of the topic, and start to see how we can rewire our way of thinking to make it a little bit more less heavy or more lighter. This is the word, lighter. Okay, let's go. But today we have to make a difference. Like, how can we rethink the way we see life? And I have to make a difference between believing and between knowing, because it's two different things. And we tend to think that spirituality, we have to believe in something. We have to believe in an external force, an external God. We have to believe in Jesus. We have to believe what the priest, the pastor is saying, or the imam, or the rabbi, or name the guru, whatever you can think. And what if spirituality was never meant to be about belief first? What if it was supposed to be more like science? Not something you accept because you are told so, but understanding how all those things works. And what if spirituality is something you can see and experience, something you can know? With gravity, we experience it. If I tell you that gravity exists, I don't have to convince you because you already experience it. Even if we don't understand it completely, we know that it's there, and we jump, we get back on the ground. So there's only two way of learnings, and I already talked about this. There is the academic way, so we are told things and we believe in those things, and there's the experience where we experience everything in life. And this is really when we experience it that we know it. We stop believing it. If I'm told something in school, I'm going to believe in that thing. But if I experience it, this is where I'm going to know it. And this is where I want to bring spirituality. And this is the same example that I used before. You can teach a doctor to be a doctor for 100 years. He's going to be a doctor on his first day of practice. This is the same way science works. We have to experience something to prove it. There's theories and there's practice. And when we know it's real, it's when we experience it. So what if spirituality was meant to work the same way? So, like, what if truth worked the same way? There's something true and there's something more on in the domain of the perceptions. What if knowing ourselves works that way as well? What if there's a science or a truth to know yourself? And somewhere along the way, we stop trying to know ourselves, how our spirituality works, and we settle for believing instead. So, what's the truth that we can know? This is a hard topic, and I think it's the worst thing about that topic is like, I hear you say, okay, Mick, if you know the truth, tell us the truth. You know what I mean? But it's a hard topic because I cannot say the truth. You have to experience it yourself. Because if I know something and I tell you, it's not a truth for you because you're gonna just believe me. It's gonna be still a belief. So if you want to know the truth, it's not something I can give you, but it's something I can show you the way. And this is the same way that Jesus was was talking about. He was saying, I'm the way, so I can show you the truth. I can show you the way, but you have to experience it by yourself. Welcome to the Indigo Project. So I started to write that episode saying that I needed to reinterpret some famous saying of Jesus. And to be honest, I'm going to be super honest. I use ChatGPT to help me structure, especially in English language, what I want to talk about. It's mostly for now books that I read anyway, already read. But yeah, I'm structured that, and I just ask a question about Jesus about one saying, and Chad started to write a big answer. So I decided to restructure that answer into that topic. But that topic came to me like this, and then I added some other of my beliefs in there to create this episode. And we're gonna reinterpret some famous saying of Jesus Christ, but in the lens of A Course in Miracle, which I don't have with me. It's upstairs, but whatever. It's one of the books that I talked about already. And there's something before interpreting those saying that we have to understand first. The difference between believing in something and knowing something. Because most of what we call spirituality today is more built on belief. You're told what is true and you're asked to accept it. This is where faith become like holding into something you can't really verify at one point. You got to be blindly faithful to the church, for an example. And when I was in church, I got told something, an analogy about faith, and the pastor was saying that faith should be strong, so strong that it should be more like knowing than believing. And he was saying like when you turn on a light switch, you want to turn it on, you know that the light's going to be on. If the light's not on, it's a problem. It doesn't mean it's going to turn on automatically because there's problem with the lights, but like when you switch the light, you turn the switch on, that the light's going to go on. It's not a matter of belief. It's something that you know at one point, because every day you do it, every day it works. So there's another way of believing, which is more on the domain of knowing. It's to drop the dogmas and to know instead of just believing. It's more about knowing yourself. And to really know ourselves, we have to remove all the perceptions. And um, it's like those perceptions, it's our ego that created that to protect us. We have to take that all apart and reach deep down in ourselves and see what is really there. There was an old idea, like a little bit quieter or deeper. We call it Gnosticism, and I'm not a fan of Gnosticism for all the big category that people put Gnosticism in, but it started somewhere that I want to talk about. I know the word is super scary. I watch a ton of content about Gnosticism, and I always hear the sentence, Gnosticism come from the term gnosis, which means knowledge, which it's true, and it is the basics of it. But after that, there was misconceptions that appeared. So Gnosis at its core, it wasn't about believing, it was about gnosis. It was about the knowledge. Not intellectual knowledge, not information, but something you can recognize as true. It is kind of the way that you don't believe that you exist. You know that you exist. You know that you're there. And what if spirituality was always meant to be like that? Not really trust this because it's written, but more look and see the truth for yourself. Jesus was saying that it's a famous saying, come and see. You have to see it for yourself. And when you see it for yourself, there's a freedom that appears in yourself, in your soul, because you let something really heavy. You let some beliefs go, and something heavy depart from you. So back to Gnosticism, like what is Gnosticism or gnosis? Um, when we talk about Gnosticism, we're not about we're not talking about just one religions or cult or one philosophy. It was more like a current of thinking that was running alongside early Christianity. And it's kind of another kind of Christianity. When it's all like the Jesus story unfolded, there was two way of thinking. The people who started to believe in, it's two different approach, right? The people who started to believe in Jesus as a God, as a savior, or people who were starting to believe in Jesus's teachings, what um, he brought forth, talking about what he wanted to talk about. So in that way, I would consider myself a little bit more Gnostic than Roman Christians, because I really believe that the teachings are there for us to take to take in, but um, the rest of the Gnosticism got a little bit influenced by other things, and we're gonna get there. But the Gnostics, rather than focusing on the beliefs of Jesus, they were focusing on the experience that Jesus's teachings was bringing. They focus on experiences, Jesus' teachings, instead of believing just in his name. Instead of authority, that movement was pointing inward. And the idea was super simple but radical. Truth is something you can come to know directly with experience. Not because someone told you, but because you see it by yourself. So, why didn't that approach survive? And there is many different um, reason, but that it was based on really looking inward and experiencing yourself, and that kind of thought, it's a little bit harder to organize. Whereas when belief can be taught, belief can be organized, beliefs can be controlled, and this is what they did with politics as well back in the day. But knowing is more personal. You can standardize it. You can't enforce it as well. You can just experience it individually, and every experience is unique to its experiencer. It requires really something harder, and it's individual, right? So it's much easier to follow a structure than to question perceptions. And over time, this one path that became dominant, the Catholic Church or the Roman Church, that really won the debate. Not because it had arguments, but it has the power. It became the Roman Empire and everything. Like it became one with the Roman Empire and the Catholic Church. So there's things that happens like the Edict of Milan or the Council of Nicaea. They didn't invent it or created structures, but they kind of solidified the structure that was already building. This is what we see in the book of Acts. With in the Bible, when Paul kind of pushed to structure the church, so anything outside of Roman Christianity was gradually labeled as heresy. That include like texts and ideas that we associate with the movement of Gnosticism. There was pretty much nothing that was preserved, and everything was excluded of the real Bible, like the Gospel of Thomas, that we're going to talk a little bit more about later. And this is how we shifted from the idea of knowing to the idea of believing. And maybe now we're in a moment that we can re-evaluate that thinking. We're in a moment when those older questions are starting to surface again, existential questions, and it would be a great idea to revisit those ideas. But there's a lot of, when we hear Gnostics, there's a lot of things that I don't agree, and they put all of this in one category that they call Gnosticism, which Gnosticism really thought like relate to knowledge at first, but they started to build a mythology about it, like every religion, including the Bible. There's they inflated everything and created allegories and histories and gods and archons and the demiurge and the evil world. A lot of details in Gnosticism that we don't need to talk right now. For some people, it's meaningful, and I really respect that because the allegories, I think there is something to this. But for what we're talking right now, it's not important at all because those things are still stories, and if they're real or not, their meaning are important, but they're just stories like all the stories in every mythologies. But if we're talking about knowing, the truth should not depend on mythology, but more on how we perceive our own life. I think, therefore, I am. I am right now, not in the future, not in the past. Those things doesn't matter. The real truth is non-temporal, and we're gonna see it today. So what really matters is the core idea underneath. The truth is something to be realized, to be experienced. That perceptions matters more than we think because we have to recognize what we perceive, what we believe, and what we know. And that the idea of knowing comes from within us. And we always think in every religion or like secret society that there's a secret knowledge going on, that there's a secret teachings of Jesus that just a few can have access to, and it sounds mysterious, huh? Kind of a secret knowledge that's gonna help you conquer the world or realize yourself, and not everybody can possess it. But what if that was not the meaning of secret knowledge? What if the teaching were never meant to be secret, but we say secret because, or hidden, because we cannot see it until we are ready to see it. Because there's a difference between information and understanding. You can hear the same words at two different moments in your life, and those words will be um, would mean different things. They don't land the same way. I read some books twice, like books about spirituality, and I can understand. It's like two different books at the end of the day. Like I understand two different things just because I change. I'm not the person that I was. It's not the book that changed. It's me, you know? And maybe that's really what secret or hidden knowledge means. Not hidden from you, but waiting for you. And this is exactly why Jesus was talking in parables most of the time. And I'm saying Jesus, like all the sages are always talking parable. It's because the ending is mostly open. Um, Sometimes those things are confusing, but parables, they don't tell you how to think. You have to find the meaning yourself. It creates a space where you can see something for yourself, and this is where we learn. You experience the story yourself by taking it through, and you learn what you have to learn with the parable. So two people can hear the same story and walk away with two different meanings completely, and neither of them are wrong. It's just from the points of view, their perceptions bring them to learn something different. The real teaching maybe was never about here's the answer, but maybe here there's something there and that can reveal something about you or reveal something inside of you. It's not about accumulating knowledge, but it's about recognizing it. Something clicks, something shifts, something become obvious in a way that it wasn't obvious that way before. And that kind of knowing can't really be given to you. Like you cannot sit in a class and someone is going to give you the knowledge of yourself. It can only seen by you. And if that's true, then maybe the words of Jesus were never meant to be taken at face value, but and worship and but more experience and reinterpreted individually. And this is where they begin to open up to a universal crowd in a completely different way. this is where something like the Gospel of Thomas become interesting. It's the Gospel of Thomas. It's labeled as a early Gnostic gospel, so people criticize it because it's labeled Gnostics. But there's nothing mythological about that gospel. It doesn't tell a story. It doesn't build a system. It is not even a gospel, to be honest, because all the other gospels are the story of Jesus. It's a story of the yeah of the Messiah that came. Whereas the Gospel of Thomas, it's 114 sayings allegedly directly from Jesus. Jesus would have said that. So it's super mysterious. And um, so it's not really a gospel and it's not really Gnostic. It's really a book by itself, and the experts they date it from the first century, so really really early after Jesus' story, to the third century. We cannot really know completely, but it's an early gospel that didn't make the roster of the Bible, unfortunately. It's my favorite, by the way. So it's short, it's direct, it's something mysterious, and many of them point inward instead of outward. The kingdom is inside of you and outside of you. This is one of the sentence of the saying, and right there we see it. And this is Jesus that said that. And there's some parallel in the Bible as well, because the Gospel of Thomas, there's a lot of parallels that in the Bible and outside the Bible. But yeah, the kingdom of heaven is inside of you. They repeat it. Jesus repeated a lot in that gospel. It's not somewhere else. It's not later. It's here. It's now. And again, it doesn't ask you to believe it. It invites you to see it. Come and see inside of yourself. So the book starts with, I'm gonna read it a little bit because it's so interesting. These are the secret saying which the living Jesus spoke, and which Didymus, Judas, Thomas were wrote down. So we think that that guy Didymus, Judas, Thomas is the apostle Thomas, and Didymus and Thomas means the word twin. So he was maybe called the twin or something. We don't really know, but yeah, like it's like that sentence say, these are the secret saying which the living Jesus spoke, and which the twin Judas the twin wrote down. So that was most likely his surname. And he said, whoever finds the interpretation of this saying will not experience death. Jesus said, let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will become troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished and he will rule over the all. And I'm not gonna analyze it right now because we're gonna have a whole episode on analyzing what Jesus says in that book because it's really interesting. The third saying is one of my favorite. Jesus said, if those who led you say to you, see, the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, it is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourself, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the Son of the living Father. But if you will not know yourself, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are the poverty. Which it doesn't even mean an interpretation at that point. Kingdom is inside of you and outside of you. You have to know yourself. If you don't know yourself, you're poor. It is one of my favorite saying, and it is really interesting to see it that in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus gave the power to the disciple, to the people, instead of saying that he is the power, which he is too, because we all are, right? There is some saying that we can really relate to the Bible, like no prophet is accepted in his own village, no physicians heal those who know him, and some that are a little bit more far from what we see in the Bible, like the saying 14, if you fast, you will bring sin upon yourself, and if you pray, you will be condemned. And if you give alms, you will arm your spirit. When you go into any land, eat what they set before you. For what goes into your mouth will not defile you, but what comes out of your mouth, that is what will defile you. Which say don't care about what you do all the time in all those practice and traditions or what you eat. Just accept everything with love and spread good words, good thought, good actions, and this is what is going to define you at the end of the day. So after reading texts like Gospel of Thomas, you start to notice something across different times, different cultures. Some writings feel like they come from the same place at one point. They don't have the same language, but the same clarity. And often we call those books divinely inspired, like the Tao Te Ching, for an example, which was in ancient China, and it was explaining the way of mastery. And there's themes that are repeating all the time between those books. But maybe that doesn't mean that something external is speaking, but it means a mind that see without distortions. This is what we're looking for. When you read A Course in Miracles, for an example, you find the same directions. It's not a mythology, but it's more insight. The books, all those books, I named them in another episode. Like there's the Book of Urantia, The Way of Mastery, The Law of One. There's the Tao Te Ching, A Course in Miracle, Christ Letters, name them. They have some insight. So they all written in different periods and they all have different authors that I tried to research it and I feel that they don't have any link together. But it's all talking about the same themes and it's talking about to recognize the truth inside of yourself and therefore to know instead of believing. And this is the real meaning of faith here. Know yourself, understand perception through reality, and recognize what is real. And if we take that lens, knowing instead of believing, if we bring it back to the words of Jesus Christ, something can change. We can see the truth in those words that are in the Bible. They stop sounding like rules and they start sounding like pointers. The first saying that we can think of is the kingdom of God is within you. And we always interpret the kingdom of God is within you, um, saying, okay, I have an energy, I have a spirituality, I have Jesus or God inside of me. But then we go right back to something outside for meaning, validation, for peace, materialism. We want to be good at our job, we want to perform. And it's all related to the outside world, even if we been told that the kingdom is inside. But what if it wasn't symbolic at all? What if it was even precise? In the perspective, for an example of A Course in Miracle, the kingdom is not a place, but it's a way of seeing life from inside. Which means if peace is in there, it's not because the world is broken around you, but it's because something in your perceptions. Your perception is off and it brings you sadness. So the kingdom isn't something you reach, but it's more something you stop blocking with your perceptions, with your ego. It is something that is revealed from inside by adjusting or understanding your reality, because the way to find peace in chaos is by listening to the good voice inside of you and seeing life differently. That little angel and that little demon. And the best example that I can give about changing your perceptions, I'm gonna talk about the second saying and it is love your enemies. And this one feels almost impossible. How hard it is to love an enemy. So we kind of take that saying and we say, okay, love your enemy. I gotta be nice, kind for the people who hurt me or with my enemies, you know. But this is not how it feels in the moment. When we get hurt, it's really hard to be like, okay, I gotta be kind, I gotta be nice, you know. But we can offer a different angle here, and it says like what you call your enemy, it's not the problem itself. It's not that person the problem, but it is the meaning that you gave to that relationship. You put the title enemy on that person, and then you create that relationship enemy that you fear, and that makes you sad, and that hurts you. But you are the one who's putting the title enemy on the other, the title of judgment. So forgiveness is not about just tolerating, but it's about to um, seeing it differently. Because if you just tolerate, deep down you tolerate because you're still mad, and we have to change the way of seeing the enemy. Because if your peace depends on someone else, then your peace is not yours. And the goal is to reappropriate our own peace. So when perception shifts, when you decide not to see the person as your enemy anymore, to remove the judgment, when you see that person for being a normal human being, like you, like me, with good sides and flaws, with traumas, with maybe difficult upbringing, you remove the conflict off of someone's back, and it takes it off your back too. This is the only way you can do it, and something strange can happen. The enemy disappear because you decide that the enemy disappear, and this is how you can love your enemy. It's like, when you're a kid and you're fighting with a brother and a sister, it's your enemy for a bit, and then you're like, what am I doing? I love that person, and we can achieve that with everybody just by removing the title enemy, and this is how you can find peace. There's this saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And the one might have divided people more than it has united people, because this is where people argue. Jesus is the only way. We have to believe in Jesus' crucifixions and resurrections to um, to be realized, or to go in paradise, or whatever the version you think. So I am the way. It sounds exclusive, but what if the I was never about an individual identity, like just one person, just Jesus? So maybe the I points to something deeper, a state of awareness, a clarity of the mind, a way of seeing without distortions. And some people call it I am consciousness. The I am, the deep down, I am what I am. This is that consciousness that is the way in itself. And I feel that Jesus sometimes was talking in the name of that consciousness, the Christ consciousness. I am the way, the truth, the light. And so if you do like I do, if you follow me, I will show you the way, and you can walk the way with me. So you can recognize it in yourself like I recognize it in myself. And it is the meaning of the word namaste, right? So the way is not a path you walk, it's the truth to remember inside of you. And at the end of the day, it's the only way of progressing, changing your perceptions of life to be able to rebuild your life, and removing all the blocks that life thought us to acquire through chaos. We can remove them. You are good now. You're good to do it. Judge not, that you be not judged. The golden rule. If you don't want to be judged, don't judge people as well. And the Course in Miracle is talking about that statement more in a decision about what is real. When you judge someone, you define them with, like the title enemy. And at the same time, you define yourself in that relationship with them. So when you judge someone, you define yourself as the judger, as the person who despises something in somebody else. So you become also the bad person because you put that judgment in somebody else. Judgment is the foundation of separation. When we judge, we put the perceptions that we're separated from other human beings, that there's a wall between us. And this is where suffering begins, to be honest. So this is This is not about being nicer per se, but it's about stepping out of a perception that was never accurate to begin with. The fact that the person deserves that judgment because he is worse than you on that side, whereas when you judge, you put yourself in that same category. You are both in the same box. Another saying is, take up your cross and follow me. This one is heavy because the meaning is really, really different. People hear you must suffer, and this is how you're going to get your salvation. But what if the cross doesn't represent the suffering? But maybe the cross represents the identity that creates it, the suffering. So what if the cross it's what you would call your ego? And taking up your cross become being aware of the identity or of the false identity that you have, so you can just release it. You don't have to wear it anymore, that heaviness of all the perceptions and all the judgment. It's time that you can put your cross down on the ground and be super lighter. So what if it's not glorifying pain, but ending the need of pain? You don't have to walk with your cross. You can just let it go and be like Jesus. One of my favorite saying now, like to reinterpret, is one of the saying that at one place in the Bible, at one part, Jesus says, "Eat my flesh and drink my blood," and people are so outraged by that saying that they start leaving. What does he mean? Eat my flesh and drink my blood. And how can we understand that? The real saying is, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life in you. So when people heard this, they walked away because on the surface, it sounds super extreme, almost disturbing. But what if, like everything else that Jesus said, we there was a parable, there was a analogy, because this is what he was talking about, and this can become something really different. Eat my flesh is not about eating flesh, hopefully, or eating meat, and there's a debate about eating meat in Christianity, but I'm not going there. It's more about uh, taking in the teaching of Jesus. When you eat something, you take it, and even your body becomes it so deeply that it's become like the teaching of Jesus should become you. You should become your own behavior, your own thinking. It's not repeating it, but believing it, integrating the teaching inside. It's believing it and becoming it, living from it. And drink my blood represent life. Blood represents like the essence of life. We live because we have blood going on, and there's something magical or special with the representation of blood. And when you say drink my blood, maybe, just maybe, is the same life, to have the same life, or the same awareness that is in me. The same life or awareness that is in me can be in you, that is in Jesus can be in us. And this is what we should drink his blood. It's an analogy, it's an image, it's not about a ritual. Even if the communion should remember us that image of becoming Jesus. It's about a new union with Jesus, right? It's not about observing the truth, but it's about becoming the truth. So if you step back a minute, all of the teaching point in the same directions. The issue is not the world, it is how the mind is seeing the world. And that's uncomfortable in a way because it changes everything. And it's time to take a little bit of accountability and say, maybe my world is the way it is because of me and not because of something else. It means, in a way, for me, it's empowering because it means that peace isn't something you find, but it's something you allow inside of yourself by changing your perceptions. It means the shift is not external, it's internal, and you have the choice and you have the power to take control of that peace. And suddenly, Jesus Christ is no longer just someone that we have to believe in, but he becomes a mirror. The Christ inside of him, the good voice inside of him, is recognizable inside of us, and we can see like a mirror with the story of Jesus. It's not about following me, but it's about see what I see. And it's all about, in that episode, I find it vague a little bit to talk about the truth without talking about the truth, but this is where we're at right now. We have to decide how to see life, to change our truth, to recognize the truth. Like we talked about in the Tao Te Ching, the way of the master, we have to put all the ego aside. And how can we put that ego aside? This is the real question, and this is the real course that we're going to take together in the next episodes. I have the book The Way of Mastery here, and we have The Way of the Heart, The Way of Transformation, and The Way of Knowing. Three different books, and the end of the third book is The Way of Knowing. So we have a lot of work to do to be able to know ourselves. So if I can say one truth before ending that video, and that truth is really what's important, it is that you create your world with your words, with your thought, with your actions. And if you stop having so many perceptions about life, about what you expect, about what you think can make you happy, about your attachment with what you have in your life, when you put that all away and you let the truth inside of yourself, uh, you let the peace emanate inside of yourself, you will be able to create a better world for yourself and for the world in general. And this is where we're going to go at by knowing ourselves and knowing the truth that you are divine. Thank you very much. Namaste.